Shawna and Jody here with Real Sisters, Real Talk.
We're glad to have you joining us as we talk about growing in our faith with God.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Real Sisters, Real Talk. I'm Shawna.
And I'm Jody, and we're so glad to have you here. So I wanted to start today, Shawna, with a question I have for you. So if I asked your kids, what's mom's favorite thing? And your answer can't be, I would tell them they couldn't answer them or family, and it can't be a spiritual thing.
Oh,
what is mom's favorite thing?
I think they would say shoes.
Yes.
I have a little collection of shoes, maybe an unnecessary amount of shoes.
Yeah, I could
I'm just
confirm that.
Keeping it real.
Yeah. You can confirm that. Yeah, but I also like shoes, and so that's fair. Maybe not as much as you, but I do like shoes.
Yeah, and particularly right now I happen to be in a season of sneakers.
Oh, fun.
Mm-hmm. They're comfortable.
Yep. We have a siren going by, but that's all right.
Real life. What would your kids say if I asked them, what's your favorite thing?
Easy. They would answer quickly. Mom likes coffee in a mug, favorite time of day. Not in a travel mug, but in a mug. There's something very comforting about that. And they would also say pajama time. Mm. And honestly, I love in the wintertime because it gets dark earlier. And I feel like when it's dark, I can have pajamas on. And so, yeah, that's my favorite time, just to get jammies on, even if I'm still doing some stuff around the house.
Yeah.
I don't mind just getting into my pajamas, getting comfy and cozy.
There's something about like slipping into your jammies that says, I don't have to go anywhere else today.
Maybe that's what it is. I'm kind of done. I get to be home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Settle in. I like that.
I like that too.
Yeah.
I like that too. I slip into my jammies pretty early at night because I get up early. As a morning show host,
Yes.
I get up at 3:50. What time does your day start?
At 5:10.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm an
we start
person
early.
too.
Yep. And I like that. I like getting up early.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a morning person, but at nighttime I'm kind of done.
Yeah, me too, for sure.
Yeah, I settle in.
And you put your jammies on and it's like clocking out to like the outside world.
Right.
I'm in for the night. I'm hunkering down.
Yes.
Yeah, like fresh face, glasses, the contacts come out. Like, that's a good time.
It is a good time of day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. So it is fun. We asked that question. It's fun to hear kind of your version of that, but also just as real sisters, we actually know a lot of these little quirks and probably have some of the same things that are really similar.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing.
When you were talking about kind of like what your favorite things, I was just thinking, what were our mom and dad's favorite things? Like if somebody asked us, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
What would we say mom and dad's favorite things were? And for sure, it would be really hard if you say that you couldn't say us because
oh my goodness, right?
Dad is very much a doting dad.
He is.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely, and didn't hide that.
No.
So, yep.
Not at all.
Yep. We could ask his friends, and they would tell you.
Yeah.
His girls, mom and his girls. For mom, I would say, she just loves playing bingo. She loves games.
Yes.
Any game.
Yes.
She can't even take a smile off her face if you say, "Do you want to play a game?" So that's really fun.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And she'll play games like all day long. Like, not living in California for so many years, a lot of our experiences and my kids' experiences with grandma and grandpa was them coming to stay at our house and visit us for like a week's time.
Yeah.
And it was just normal when grandma and grandpa came that I would set the table, we would eat, we would clear the table, we would deal. You know what I mean? It was just like immediately eat and games. That was what we did like constantly.
Yeah. So honestly, to answer that question, Dad absolutely doted over us girls, and he had a lot. He played golf and all that kind of stuff. But also, we've just kind of recently been in a transition because our dad went home to be with the Lord recently, and so that's a transition for us. Also, a little bit of an emotional thing to share. But I think one of the beautiful things about Dad and Mom, but just kind of singling in Dad right now. Right. Dad passed a heritage of faith to us. His faith was deep. He modeled what it meant to walk with the Lord. He had personal quiet times, and we got to see him doing that. We saw him on his knees in prayer.
In his underwear.
Yes, because he would right on his bed, he would kneel down and pray. And it wasn't uncommon to walk by Mom and Dad's room at night or in the morning and see him there.
Right.
You almost expected that to be.
And I knew, like when I saw Dad on his knees praying, I knew at some point in the conversation it was going to be about me.
Yes.
Like I knew there was a covering of prayer over my life from my earliest memories.
And there's something so joyful, so peaceful, so calming to know that somebody is fighting for you in prayer on a constant basis. And I will declare this, and I really believe it to be true. Dad fought for us in prayer, prayed desperately for us, deeply for us, until God took him home.
Yeah, right.
And that was a loss, as much as losing Dad and that relationship and just the shift that took place. There was a grieving of having somebody pray for me the way he prayed for us, right? Like there was a real thing there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I processed that the way that you're, explaining it right now. Yeah, for me, one of the hardest moments for me was in Dad's passing was, well, first of all, being far away and trying to decide when it was time to come home and be with him. But so I came like 2 weeks before. You had called me and said Dad wasn't doing well, and so I came immediately. And I'm so glad I did, because he was still, we could have conversations with him, and and he knew who I was, and all, he was just very interactive and all that.
Just to interject real quick, we actually, our oldest sister also lives away, and so we actually got everybody home for that week, and it was a sweet time.
Yeah.
Grateful for that we got to do that. But keep going.
One of my funnest memories of that time with Dad was, it was just the two of us in his room, and we were singing. And we sang, What a Friend We Have in Jesus, we sang. And it was just so cute, because I didn't want to tire him out too much, so I would retard and come to the end, and then he would pick up the next verse, and I'm like,
just keep going.
Okay, we're still going. And and then I found out later, I don't remember if it was you or one of the other sisters that told me that, they're like, what? He was singing with you? Like, he didn't have the capacity to be able to do that.
He really wasn't even speaking a whole lot at that point. And so to have him sing like that, and just like to tell you, Shawna recorded a little bit of that, and it is one of the sweetest things we have recorded, is because that's who Dad was.
Yeah.
And it's just a sweet memory.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
When it comes to processing Dad's, going to heaven, one of the moments that stands out to me was New Year's Eve. So we have 2 older sisters, and they both had the privilege of being with Dad in the room with him, but they each FaceTimed one of us, right? So all 4 of us were there. You and I were there via FaceTime. They were there in person. And we were saying goodbye to Dad. And everybody kind of had an opportunity to speak to him. And I had said, I had said this so many times to Dad, because we just didn't know how much time we had. Right. So I had said, again, Dad, I love you. You're the best dad to me. Thank you for being such a good dad. Thank you for loving me the way you did. I wouldn't have, wanted to do anything differently. Like, just affirming him and our relationship and the way that he loved me so well. And he showed me what the Father's love looked like, our Heavenly Father's love looked like. And then you were talking to Dad, and you said, it's okay, Dad, you can go. And it was like my head cocked, and something in me was like, no, I'm not okay with that. Like, I thought that what you said was very kind. I thought it was a loving thing to say, and I thought it was the right thing to say, but I knew in my spirit I wasn't in agreement. And I thought, now why am I not okay with it? Because, it is good and right, and it is time, but something in me wasn't quite settled. So the next morning, New Year's Day, I got up, and I was the first one up, and sat by the Christmas tree, because it was still up at our house, and was like, I need to process this with the Lord. And Dad taught us to do that, right?
He did. He modeled it.
Yeah, when we didn't know what to do, and we were wrestling through things, you sit with the Lord, you open up the Bible, you have conversations with the Lord, and you invite him in to help you to process it. So I was doing that on that New Year's morning, and what I realized was the reason I wasn't ready to say goodbye to Dad was because he had loved me so well. And I thought, when Dad goes to heaven, just like for you, it was like, I don't have that prayer covering anymore.
Yes.
For me, it was, I'm not going to be loved that way. You know, the way that Dad loves you, like no expectations, and you walk in the room and he just lights up and,
Yes.
you know, so interested in everything that's going on in your world and wanting to listen and wanting to hear. And I don't know, I just thought, man, I'm not ever going to have that again. And so in my spirit, I was like, I'm not ready for my dad to go. Well, God, in his goodness, that morning brought me to Romans 8:38 and 39 and reminded me that God's love for me is sweeter, better than my dad's love, and that nothing will ever separate me from God's love. So it was just God's way of saying, honey,
Yeah.
this isn't going away.
Right.
Like, I love you even better than your dad loves you, and that's not ever gonna stop.
Right.
And in that, there was a lot of tears, and there was a lot of, yes, Lord, I get it, and I believe you, and I trust you. And I felt, spiritually, I felt a release. And then I wrote it in my journal. I'm a big journaler. I wrote, okay, I'm okay. And right when I wrote that, like, it's okay for you to take Dad, I'm okay. I wrote it in my journal. Literally, I was penning the words when my phone lit up, and it was you calling me to tell me that Dad had just gone to heaven.
Yeah. Yeah. And so sweetly, God met you and walked you there before he took Dad home. But the thing is, you had to be willing to go there. And it takes work sometimes to create the space to go there and to wrestle it out with God. But it's literally what Dad taught us.
Yeah.
And so as you were sitting in the presence of God and God met you there, when I got the phone call that Dad passed, I was sitting on my couch with my Bible open, and I was journaling kind of my process in that. So in the journey you shared that you and I were on FaceTime with Dad that night before he passed. So my story of that is I live still in Southern California, and so Mom and Dad were in an assisted living facility just a couple miles from my home, and so I was there every day. I was in Dad's room every day with Mom, and Mom has an apartment there, and so she would come over, and it was a part of, even a couple times a day, that even because we were still in the kind of the COVID era a little bit, we had to set appointments, and they were so gracious and kind of giving me open appointments for that last season. But this was a part of my life, so much a part of my rhythm. And so we had, just been praying as we could see God was preparing Dad to go home. And we had made a plan, and my deep desire was to have him in our home, so we could all be together. And so I had set that up with hospice, and I had all these plans of how we were going to walk him to the gates of heaven, and what that was going to look like. And so he died on January 1st. The Tuesday before that Tuesday night, we had to take a COVID test every like 2 days or 3 days to go in and see him. I wasn't sick or anything, but that Tuesday when I took that test, on Wednesday when I got it back, it came back positive. And so that meant that I didn't get to go back into the room, and I didn't get to see Dad those last final days. It meant that we couldn't bring him into our home, and it didn't get to be the plan that I had laid out, that I had envisioned in my mind of what those final days would look like. And so I had to go into a grieving process of not just grieving the loss of Dad, but to grieve the loss of what I wanted that to look like.
Yeah.
And so isn't that so often what we have to do in life? We write a story, and it's a good story. That would be a good ending, to have him in our home. And my husband was fully supportive of that, and have all of us together singing hymns over him. And that was a good plan, but it wasn't God's plan. Yeah. And so I had to go through that process with the Lord to really grieve it, not just pretend it away, but to grieve it, to name it, to bring it before God, to wrestle it out, and then to get to a place where it was this. I do not think for a second that God's plan is not best, and that he has a reason for it, and I don't have to understand that reason. Yeah. But I can trust that our good God has a plan, and he's walking it out, and it's going to be good. And so there was a lot of learning
Oh my
for me in
gosh,
that
yeah.
journey.
Yeah, that was really hard because you had shared that with us. You know what? We're gonna move Dad in here. We'd had the hospice meeting.
We had done the
We had
meeting.
the plan.
Yeah.
Like that's how it was gonna be. And so, when I've never asked you this question
Yeah.
before, but when the last time that you were with Dad in person, you didn't know it was your last time with Dad.
I didn't know. But I will say, each time that I was with Dad, so in those final weeks, months even of Dad's life, he could no longer read the Bible, but he knew the Word of God. And so he would quote Scripture. So when I was with him, we would quote Scripture together because that's what would bring peace over him. And we would, Psalm 23, 1 John 1:9, John 3:16, 1 Corinthians 10, just so many verses.
Yeah.
And every time we would pray together, I would pray for him, and I would give him a kiss and tell him how much I loved him. And so there were lots of, like you had said too, from yours is a different experience because you would have to leave and go far away.
Right.
But I was intentional, but I had no idea that I wouldn't walk back in the room and hold his hand and all of those things. I didn't realize that I wasn't going to get to be with Mom in those moments afterwards. And those were the hardest things to let go of. But I will also say that God met me in that. He met me in that. He didn't just... It's one of the beautiful things about our relationship with God is he doesn't go, well, that's life. Good luck with that. He meets us in the middle of what we're dealing with.
Yeah. Yes.
So I will say one of the sweet things is when you were here for that week, we set up a time for our pastor Ken to come and to pray over Dad, knowing that we were kind of nearing the end. We didn't know if it'd be months or weeks or days, what that would look like. But so we had set up a time for him to come and do that. And I'd honestly done that before I even knew you guys were coming because I just thought, oh, I want Pastor Ken to come in and pray. And so it happened to be on this Thursday, and Dad, one of his requests was, I want all of my girls in the same place at one time. Mom and all the girls. He refers all as the girls. And because of the complications of getting into the facility, we decided it would be better to take him in a wheelchair and just bring him right outside onto the patio where they would, where we would be able to meet with him, and Pastor Kim would be able to pray over us, and pray over Dad. And so in that, and this was the day we met with hospice. It was in between our meetings. It was a big day. And so before Pastor Ken was going to pray, he just said a blessing over Dad and what the heritage of faith we had. And then he said, do each of you girls want to say something to your dad? And so we took turns, one at a time, all four of us girls. There's four daughters. And we got down on our knees in front of Dad's wheelchair and just looked him eye to eye. And we thanked him for who he was. And so the thing I shared with Dad at that moment is I said, Dad, I want to thank you for the many prayers that you prayed over me. I want to thank you for the impact that those have had on my life and the way that they've impacted Johnny, my husband, and the way those have impacted my kids. The prayers he prayed over me before they were in my life and the prayers he prayed over them, the way that has impacted their life and their journey. And I said to him, Dad, those prayers not only impact me and Johnny and Tyler and Kellen and Lauren, but they impact my grandchildren who are not here yet and my great-grandchildren, because there's a heritage that goes there. There's a legacy that's left behind. And I can't thank you enough for the impact those prayers have. And one of the things I actually had to teach that night, I was speaking at a women's event, women's Bible study that night. And the whole close of my talk, I ended up sharing this. I didn't plan to. But we get to choose what we leave. And so if even if you're later in life and you feel like that's not the legacy I've left for my family, then choose today how you're going to live that out, how you're going to leave your legacy for your family. We want to be intentional because we will leave a legacy. And we want to be intentional with what that is. And we can choose that today. It doesn't have to be something that we mourn, that we never did that. We get to choose today how we live that out. But I was really grateful for those moments, because I got to look him in the eyes and speak the words of blessing that he had really blessed me with for so many years.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And now, you talk about the heritage of faith and how it impacted the generations to come. He hasn't yet met baby Faye, your granddaughter, but
She came a year later.
right.
Yeah.
And there's, she's already experiencing the benefit and the blessings of the heritage that he left behind through you and Johnny, through your kids,
Absolutely.
So we definitely should have had Kleenex for
I
this
know,
episode. I'm not
right?
sure exactly
We
what I
should
was
have been
thinking,
prepared
but
for that. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm so grateful to have grown up in a household of faith. And
Yes.
like you said, now to choose, how we pass this on to our kids. And I tell you what, like having adult kids, as a mom, you want to provide for your kids for everything that they need, like all the time. And having kids who are not in my home, who will reach out to me, with what's going on in their world, my knee-jerk reaction, like everything in me as a mama goes, I want to provide what you need right now in this moment.
Right.
And this fresh season has very much been a season of how do I point my kids to Jesus? Like that, because that's what they need, not
That
me.
is what they need.
They don't need to know that
Yes.
mom is going to have the answer. They need to know that the Lord is going to have the answer, and that in relationship with him and in conversation with him and in recognizing that he's present in the moment that they're in, that's what I want for them, more than them coming to me.
So isn't that one of the most difficult things in parenting? I mean, Shawna and I have had this conversation before, but there's so many times, as we parent adult children or like even teens and into adult children, there's so many times when I feel like something is going on and I keep inserting myself in their relationship with God, and I feel like God just goes, oh, Jody.
I got it.
I have this relationship with your kids. Can you step aside, please? And let me do this. I'm at work. And trust me that I'm at work. And it's, as a nurturer, we want to provide physically what they need. And God's got them on this journey.
Yep.
And so letting go. And I just think Dad did that really well. Dad and Mom both did that really
Right.
well and modeled that as well, too. But
All right, so every episode's not going to be this sappy, right?
no,
We're not going to cry
we
every
promise.
time. Oh my goodness! Thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining us today and for letting us just remember our sweet dad and the impact that he has had on our life. And we do want to encourage you that the choices that you're making today are leaving a legacy for the people behind you. And if that hurts your heart a little bit, I'm sorry for that. But I also think that in and of itself is an opportunity to sit with the Lord and to talk about how you want it to be different in the days to come and the weeks to come. And he's so good. He will take you by the hand and he will literally walk you into what it looks like to model faith for the people who are coming behind you. And what a sweet gift.
And I think also if you have experienced loss, whether it's recent or years ago, lean in. If there's questions you have about that or some processing you need to do, go there with God. Have the conversation with God. Sit with him. Process it out with him, because our healing comes from relationship with God.
That's right.
And he will walk in that with you. You absolutely are not alone.
So thanks for being here with us today. You can connect with us here at Real Sisters Real Talk. We have an Instagram account, Real Sisters Real Talk, but we also have a website, and it's jodyandshauna.com, and those are ways that we can stay connected outside of the podcast itself. But thank you for being with us today for this episode.
Yeah, thanks for joining us for Real Sisters Real Talk. We want to remind you always that we serve a real God who really loves you.